Hey guys, if you're anything like me, you don't have a dad or a mom that can help you navigate corporate America. You're just out here thugging it out, trying to make it, trying to get promoted, trying to get the new opportunity, all that stuff. Whew. Listen, I'm creating a course, and my goal is to help you set yourself up for success. And the result should be you should be eligible for promotion 18 to 24 months after you take this course. I'm so excited. I'm putting my heart and soul into this. Now, I just need to know, is this something you're really interested in? If so, go to trillinba.com and sign up in the pop-up. That way, when registration opens, you'll be the first to know. Thank you guys for all of your support. And again, if you have any questions or concerns, you can always email me at ask@trillinba.com. Now let's start the show. Welcome to the Trill MBA Show. I'm your host, Felicia Ann Rose Anuha, aka the Trillest MBA you will ever know. And I'm here to help you survive and thrive in corporate America by giving you the truth and being as real as only I can be. Okay, you guys, today is the realest episode I have ever done. And I mean, I've done some Trill episodes, but today is not a typical episode because I have a listener that is going to tell her story from the inside. Yes, you guys, we are going inside the belly of the beast of corporate America. And I have somebody who is giving me an exclusive to the hell that she went through at her last organization, which is a Fortune 500 that shall not be named because I ain't got no money. I don't make money from this. Like, I don't want to be sued. So we're not going to name names. But we are going to share her story and let this be the catalyst to our discussion today about how you need to recognize the red flags when you first start your jobs. So get this, many of you are graduating and going into your first job over the next couple of months. Please share this episode because if you see the things that we are about to talk about happening to you, then you need to get help immediately because this runs deeper than you just not cutting it or you aren't a good fit. This is the real bullshit that crazy institutionalized racism manifests its ugly head and oppresses us. And that is what we're going to talk about today. Today, I have a corporate warrior who shall not be named. We are disguising her voice because she is going to get into some real details of her story and documents have been signed. So we're not trying to get anybody, me or her, in a situation. We're not trying to fight that way, but we do want to tell you what's really happening on the front lines so you can protect yourself. So corporate warrior, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm so happy that you contacted me, and I'm so happy the conversation we had and you share with me this story. Because, first of all, I should probably put a trigger warning at the beginning of this episode because I was definitely triggered. And the big thing that I want everyone to know is that you are not alone. Just like when I talked to you before, I told you, you are not alone. You're not crazy. This has happened to me in different ways. It has happened to many of my friends in different ways. I'm not sure how exactly is the first trigger to have all of this manifest and be treated in this manner as a human, but it happens, and it happens a lot, especially in big, huge organizations. So First thing I want to talk to you about is I want to give context about your hiring process. So help me share with the listeners, how did you first meet this company?
Sure. So it was well into my final year during my MBA program, and just standard campus recruiting. The position was posted. Applied or submitted an application. In addition to other companies, called for an interview. Went through the interview process, and got an offer. So it's pretty straightforward.
Right. So when you were interacting with the company, what were some of the things that they sold you on to say, hey, I could do a good job here?
Yeah, I think a lot of Fortune 500 companies just sort of skew the rhetoric where it's, growth opportunities, the opportunity to really diversify your body, your skill set, opportunities, to really elevate your level of performance, X, Y, and Z company perks. And, that was pretty much it.
Right. And then to have a big name company on your resume is always.
Exactly. And that too.
Yeah.
That too.
And so one thing I want listeners to pay attention for is even though a company sounds good on paper, it might not be good for you. And so you have to pay attention to the company's reputation on the low, because a lot of these companies have their public reputation. Oh, this amazing company does all these amazing things and these amazing products, and they're very popular. But then if you really start talking to some of your colleagues that have worked there and start asking, okay, give me the good, the bad, the ugly, then you start hearing themes and you need to pay attention to that. So did you do any of that, Corporate Warrior? Did you ask some of your alums who had worked at the company, or did you hear any negative feedback that was a theme about the company?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would definitely say I did, but my effort along that discipline was measured. And what I mean by that is I probably only talked to, I would say maybe about 4 folks within my alumni network. And it was so interesting because 2 of the individuals, weren't able to speak to me directly, over the phone. And so I got a little bit of an anecdote, and, it was pretty much positive. Like, there were no signs, there were just no indicators. And the 2 other folks that I spoke to, gave me this positive and kind of glowing. But, looking back at it in hindsight, both individuals had only been with the company about, I think, 2 years. I think one individual was about a year and the other was about 2 years. So looking back in hindsight, I probably should have paid a little bit more attention to that.
Yes. And the other thing you got to do is you got to find somebody that will keep it real with you. And so one good question to ask when you're at this phase of evaluating an opportunity is ask somebody who's going to keep it all the way true with you. Give me the good, the bad, the ugly. Like, give it to me all.
Absolutely.
Because people want to tell you the good things. And especially it's another Black person that works at the company. They want you to come too. Like, they're like, we need you. Please come.
Yes.
Come.
Yes.
And what they're really doing is that, no. That woman in Get Out, that's really what's happening. And so she's trying to get out or get the woman out of her body. I love that movie. But that's how, when I see that, I'm like, that's how I feel when I'm at a company and I'm recruiting and I'm supposed to be telling people how great it is, but I know the trash shit they doing to people. And so I'm looking at them like, yes, it's a wonderful company. But I'm going, no, run.
That is so great. And that is such an excellent point because, for a lot of us really awesome, wonderful, strong, brilliant sisters out there that are doing our thing, getting our education, and just crushing at corporate, if you're sort of going through the MBA, pilgrimage, and you're sort of at that intersection of, on-campus recruiting because you're going to be graduating soon, you really need to please take this opportunity to really pay attention to your confirmation bias, right? It's a really pressure cooker of a situation for anyone who's ever gone through on-campus recruiting. I mean, it is intense. It is a burn. I had a good friend of mine that referred to it as a bloodbath. I mean, it's just really intense. And what we have the tendency to do, and I definitely fell into this trap as well, is, you're coming out, you really want to, get that offer. You really want it with like a big name company, at least most of us, and I definitely did. And so, you get an offer or you get, a couple of offers. When we start talking to individuals who work at these companies, what's really happening in our subconscious and maybe our conscious is we're really seeking confirmation bias. So we're operating out of that confirmation bias because it's just sort of like how open are we really to really getting the ugly? I will definitely say from my experience looking back, I was operating through the lens of more confirmation bias, where I was more open to more of the positive feedback or anecdotes that I was getting because that sort of reinforced the decision that I was making, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely watching out for that. What Felicia is sharing with you all is 1,000% very important. It's so important to find someone who has the courage and is open to really give you the truth and pay attention to the positive, but especially the negative, and definitely synthesize, hey, is this a company or is this an opportunity or an environment where I truly think that I can thrive in, independent of what Nirep is sharing with you.
Exactly. And so the other thing you need to do is look up alums that don't work at the company anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're more willing to tell you their story. Now, some caveats you need to understand as you're listening to their story. Did they have a good relationship with their boss? How did their boss treat them? Did they have sponsors and advocates in the company? How long did they stay with the company? You have to weigh all those things against what they're telling you, but you need to look for themes of how people are saying they're treated, especially after they've gone on and they've moved on. If they talk about their experience in a very pointed way and it becomes, oh, this person said that, this person said that, then just know that you could come against that thing that happened to all those people. You're not that special. There's no immunity here. So these are the things you need to pay attention to when you're vetting a new organization, right? So that was before you started. Now, let's talk about your first 30 days and your onboarding. So what was that like?
Yeah, this is where things started to really get interesting. So there were a couple of things that sort of occurred, but, to be honest, in the moment, I really didn't think much about it. Mm-hmm. The first observation I made was like, wow, like coming into a new space in terms of really having, sort of like reference material, to sort of onboard to your specific role and function, there really wasn't a lot. So that's a really good indicator that, you know what? Building relationships and having positive partnerships is really critical to being successful where you're at. And the reason I say that is in contrast to some other past employers, that I work with, where, you kind of come in and there's just so much reference material, everything from models, even down to policy and procedure documents. Like there's just so much documentation and transparency to facilitate really easy knowledge share. Not every company has that. Right. So that's a really critical indicator. And so a couple of other things that, it kind of threw me for a little bit, but like I said, I didn't think of in the moment. So we had, a situation where, I was filling in for another peer. And so I had to have a lot of knowledge transfers with her, but everything was pretty much by word of mouth. You have, other issues where if I asked a question to my immediate manager or my manager's manager, I was directed to ask my peer. And, I wasn't given the information that I needed. Other instances whereby, you have to get access to critical systems that have the data that you need to do your analysis. I didn't get mine for like 120 days.
Wait, you didn't get, hold on, pause, full stop, pause. You did not get access to the system that had the data that you needed to do your job.
Correct.
For 120 days.
4 months, yeah. And so I
but
had
you
to
had
compensate.
deliverables. Hold on.
Yeah.
You had deliverables due, but no access.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm sorry. I need let's take a pause. For anyone who's feeling triggered right now, it's okay. We made it. Remember the ancestors. They are with us. All right, corporate warrior. Let me ask you this. In your first 2 weeks, how many one-on-ones did you have with your manager? Do you remember?
I would have to say 1.
In 2 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one thing that I want you guys out there to understand is your first 2 weeks, your manager should be giving you a lot of time unless you're in a role that you've done before or you've done the objective outcomes of your job before. And it literally is okay, I know exactly what to do. You need this type of report. I need to analyze this data this way. This is the same system I used at my last gig, set up the same way. If you're walking into a new company with new processes and new ways of working, your manager should have an onboarding plan for you, which includes the following. Number 1, several checkpoint meetings with you in the first 30 days. At least 1 meeting a week with you for at least an hour. Another meeting critical is that you should be told what your objectives are for the first 90 days and the first 6 months. And then at 6 months, you should be having a mini mid-year check-in according on when you started. Now, a lot of you guys who are graduating from graduate school programs, what's going to happen is you're going to start, there should be some training, it should be organized. If it's not organized, your manager isn't organized, then you have to do this for yourself. And I know that's not fair and I know it's hard, but you are in control of your own career and you have to set yourself up for success. So corporate warrior, was there a plan or a thought of a plan that your manager gave to you when you started?
So a plan coming directly from my manager, no. So in my instance, I was filling in for a peer who'd actually been with the company about almost 10 years. And this individual was moving on. And so really a lot of the onboarding was with this other individual. And so this other individual did actually take the time to put together an onboarding schedule, which is quite detailed. But the reality of our day-to-day is the movements and changes and really the asks from, the VP were so frequent and so, how do I say?
Chaotic. Just let's be honest. Yeah, because
that it completely threw off the schedule. It's just, there's no way we could have even sort of implemented or sort of followed that schedule because this individual, this peer who was, sort of managing my onboard would get called into so many different ad hoc projects that needed to be done yesterday. So in that scenario, my immediate default is, okay, I'm just going to have to self-learn as much as I can to sort of help compensate.
Okay, which I commend you for that. But if you guys find yourself in the situation where the person that's onboarding you is not your manager, has another completely different job to do now, and they keep getting pulled away and shortchanging your onboarding, you need to sit down with your manager and you need to have a very clear and adult conversation with them in a very happy and positive way. Because, we can't be angry Black women now, can we? And so you need to let your manager know, hey, this is the plan this person created, and this is where you need to fill in the gaps. Now, a problem you may run into is that your manager actually doesn't know how to do your job, and so they won't be able to teach you. That actually happens.
1,000%. You are so spot on. That was exactly my scenario. But I didn't see that until about 5-6 months in. Mm-hmm. I didn't recognize that was the case.
So you have to see that. And if that's the case, then you say, hey, manager, if, they're giving you like a weird runaround or they're saying, go ask other people for help, that means they don't know what the fuck they doing. So what you need to do then is you need to say, who in the department would you say is the like rock star person that does this type of work? And have your manager show you who that person is. And then ask your manager, can you make a warm introduction for me? And I will be happy to connect with that person, build a relationship with them, and I'll lean into their expertise to make sure that this gets done in the best way possible. Now, I'm assuming that your manager was trash, as most managers are, and would just go tell you to go figure it out.
Yeah, that was definitely his prerogative, but it's interesting because within the sort of the group or the department, there was definitely actually my manager's peer who was he was just a standout rock star. There wasn't anything that this individual didn't know. But my manager was not very, how do I say, supportive of me building or establishing a close relationship with this individual because he saw it as, being put in a negative light to his boss. And his boss clearly favors this other individual. So that was an interesting dynamic.
Right. And so when you run into a dynamic like that, where your boss is the mediocre one between his peer set, that's where you skip over and you start building a relationship with his manager. And then anybody his manager likes, fuck your boss. You can't, you want to be respectful of that relationship, right? Because that person has a lot of weight on what gets written down about you. But if you build these other preemptive relationships around your boss, he will be or she will be forced to say the right things about you. Because if your boss's boss likes you and your boss doesn't, guess what your boss can't do? Because now your boss looking stupid if they try to come for you. And then, because this person is like, well, that's not my interactions with the corporate warrior. So why are you talking negatively about her? And now there's this confusion. See, that's not how you fall in line. So it behooves you to use your knowledge of how to talk to Dwights. And if you don't know how to talk to Dwights, and I love how this DWIGHTS. So there's a book, and I need you guys to, if you don't go buy the book, I suggest you buy the book. I actually really like this book. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. Basically, what this book is a white man telling you how to make friends with white people. Read the book. And if you're lazy, go to Wikipedia, because the actual Wikipedia page breaks down the high level takeaways from the book. And so that way, if there's a specific thing that you need to work on, you can go straight to that chapter in the book and read that chapter. But it is a guide. I keep that book with me all the time. I'm always studying how to better communicate with the whites because they don't understand us. And we are forced to understand them because they just took over and, slavery. So, yeah, but this is what we need to do. And this way you can figure out how to build those relationships, how to win friends around your boss so that if your boss is just a complete asshole for no fucking reason, then you can work around him. You can still set yourself up for success, but you have to move swiftly and quickly, which means you have to pay attention. If your boss is not giving you the onboarding support that you need, that's the biggest red flag ever. And in your first 30 days, if the people who were recruiting you talking about how great this place is and how this, and that, and then you get in there and it feels like a 180, a okie doke, especially if they hire you for one job and then you start and they're like, yeah, so what had happened was, and so now we need you to do this job. And you're like, whoa, those are all red flags. And you should be on high alert. And if you are going through this, if you start a job and you're going through this, y'all need to email me. You need to set up time with me. We need to talk about it. Or you need to get with one of your mentors. Like, you need to create a plan of action so that you don't succumb in 90 days to the bullshit that's about to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well said.
All right. So now, first 30 days, no real onboarding, had to self-learn. Oh, Jesus. Okay, I'm trying to stay calm. This is triggering for me. It really is.
And I was going to throw another indicator. This is another one that I didn't acknowledge as well, which is when you are, whenever you join like a major corporation, a lot of these companies have like what they call ethnic affinity groups.
Yes.
And these groups usually promote a lot of the diversity events in the organization. Now, if you start to see a pattern whereby your manager is invited to these diversity events and he doesn't show up or she doesn't show up, that's a sign.
That's always a big sign. But I will say that I want to put a caveat. Recognize, though, if all the whites in your company never come to the Black ERG stuff, that's a cultural thing. And that's not necessarily your manager being shady. But if the whites are showing up to the stuff and your manager isn't, that's a flag.
Yeah.
That's a huge flag.
My scenario was the second, where you'd have other Caucasian managers of minority employees show up, but mine didn't show up. And that was from day one.
Yeah, so that's a problem. It's duly noted, right? Because that means that they don't care, which means they ain't gonna care much about your ass either. That's what that is. And that's fine. You don't need your manager to particularly care about you as long as you're working to build those relationships around him. And then you are working to get your promotion and move on from that manager as fast as possible. But you have to start recognizing this from day one. You have to be intentional about it. If you walk in there thinking that, okay, I'm a newbie and, I've been told all these great things about this company, and then your expectation is they want me to succeed. So they're going to set me up for success. Wrong. It's just not going to happen. Okay. When you started to see the red flags, did you start documenting?
To be honest, I would say I really didn't start to document until I was about 5-6 months in. And part of my decision to do so, just to be really honest and transparent with the listeners, is I just didn't want to believe that that's what was happening. Like it was, when I would start to gather, like just different observations, I really didn't want to believe it. So that's on me for sort of choosing to, sort of be naive kind of early on. But then as things started to intensify a little bit, it's almost like there's an inner voice that just says, hey, I don't think this is right. Like, I really don't think this is right. And so I had the opportunity to kind of share, once I identified someone in the company, she's more senior, but I built a relationship and I definitely felt that she would protect my confidence. I started to share what's going on. And her first reaction, she let me just sort of say my piece. And her very first reaction is, do you want to move? Because this is not a healthy situation. That was like her very first response to me. And so that really having a safe space to be transparent and honest about what your experience is really important. So, definitely be on the lookout to seek out those individuals that can give you that. And then, number two, it's so important to document for a number of reasons, but most of which is when you're going through, sort of like a negative intro into a company or your experience isn't as positive, your emotions are kind of at a high, right? And, they're sort of going all over the place. So it's really, really important to document things as they happen, because that gives you an opportunity to allow your emotions to subside and deflate. And then you can look at things factually and objectively. And that helps you come across more gathered when you're speaking about it. It's almost as though the emotion is sort of sucked out of it and you're really just having a conversation, but that's in alignment with what the facts are. So that's really important. The other thing too is it's drawing a picture. That's the other reason why documenting is important. It draws a picture, and you have the opportunity to look for yourself and decide, hey, is this right? Is this not right? This isn't, is this truly setting me up for success? Are these behaviors that I've experienced, in line with company policy. And you can really make those assessments objectively. And that's really important in terms of navigating to a decision that's going to be best for you.
Right. And so what's important from what you just said, Corporate Warrior, is read the company policy. Mm-hmm. That is so important. You should get that policy day one. You should ask on your first day when you come in and you're taking your picture for your badge, you're filling out all the HR paperwork. Everybody goes through that morning where you're getting set up in the company system as a new employee. And so what you want to do is at that time, ask the HR people, hey, where's your company policy? If they don't give it to you. Usually they give it to you. But if you don't get it, you say, where is it? If it's electronic, which likely at this point in time it will be, you make sure they tell you where it is. And I want you to go home that night and I want you to read the company policy, especially if you have a side hustle or you do activities outside of work. I want you to make sure you understand if there's any conflicts, any reason anything could be wrong, if this company operates differently than your last company. So there was something that you did that broke policy.
Yes, that is right.
And the reason why you did it, because at your last company, it was fine to do. It wasn't against the policy.
Exactly.
And so do you want to talk about what you did, or can you talk about what you did?
I don't think I can talk specific because, again, there were, like documents signed.
Right.
But I think the major teaching point is, even though companies are in the Fortune 500, companies have different policies for a different variety of things. So don't make the mistake of assuming, like making a faulty assumption that every company policy is the same. Definitely take time to dive into what are all the pertinent policies that I need to be familiar with, and definitely do that as early as possible.
Exactly. Because one thing I will say is every company has a different policy around booking travel. I have worked at companies where you had to pay for all your travel up front and then you get reimbursed. I have another company, you could never book your travel outside of their system. And if you did, you would get in real trouble, which makes no sense, right? Like, it's travel. Like, it should be a no-brainer. But those things, they may be little, but they give crazy ass people ammunition against you. And so you want to understand the rules of the game that you're in at that place, so you understand how to navigate and what rules to break to get where you're trying to go in and what rules you need to fall in line on. Okay? All right. So what I want to do right now, you lovingly sent me a list of some things that you went through. And I want to make sure that we paint this picture. So I'm just going to read. I mean, there's like 2, 4, 6, 8. There's like 20 bullets of specific things that you went through. But the one thing that really stuck out to me that is a huge red flag. So this is after your 90 days in. Huge red flag. So the situation for our corporate warrior was that there was a new data system implementation and training need to be given to use the system. No big deal, right? This happens all the time. So corporate warrior, what happened with this training?
So that was really interesting. It was a new analysis tool that was being rolled out. And, basically, coming in, I had 2 peers, 2 coworkers who pretty much had sort of worked with the system. They were sort of like early, like champions for the system. And so they had worked on it for, I think, like 2 months before I was assigned this. But they were actually sent out for a week-long training, off-site training, to learn about this new analytical tool. And, coming in, my expectation is, oh, okay, I'm going to get the same level of training. But that wasn't the case. So I was basically told, well, I have a tier 1 MBA. And so they think it's not necessary for me to go offsite for a week, but the expectation is I was going to not only perform as well, but actually outperform my peers.
Without the training.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so everybody just take a pause. We're going to breathe. Because I know y'all feel this. I know. Okay. If this happens to you, you need to state the facts, state that you asked for help. Make sure you email your boss and say, I just want to reiterate, I asked for permission to go to this training on this new system. XYZ people got to go on this training. I was informed that I didn't need to go on the training because I have XYZ education that should allow me to not need training on a new tool. That's all you have to say. Because if a judge reads that, it's going to be a problem because they're treating you differently. Also, the EEOC will have a field day with that as well. So you should not be treated differently from your peers. Point blank, period. If your peers get a training, you get a training. If your peers get to take a day off for whatever, you get to take a day off for whatever. They have to treat you the same as far as tools and resources. If they don't, then it's a problem. And so that's where you need to be documenting. But honestly, you guys, I would start documenting the first 2 weeks. Just even the good things. Write down all the good things. Write down the things that are questionable. You shouldn't really have bad things the first 2 weeks, but hey, well, this is corporate America and we dealing with crazy folks. So I want you guys to get a file on your computer and then consistently email that to yourself. Keep a running tally of how your days are going in your first 90 days. You don't have to share it with your manager. It's just for you. No need to cause alarm. But when the time comes for you to hit them with the hit them with the you then will be ready. So you stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Okay, the other thing that kills me on here, and this is very, very key, and this is where you need to start strategically acting a fool. You said on here, your manager, so your boss's boss, lied about your work product.
Mm-hmm. Yep, pretty much.
So was it a situation of they said you didn't do what you're supposed to do, or they said that they did it and you didn't? Like, can you give us a little more color around it without giving too many details?
Yeah, sure. So part of, how do I say, their targets. So in terms of the content of my role, there are certain quantitative targets that one has to hit. So you have to hit a particular numerical target. Mm-hmm. And so this is a scenario where I remember it was the second quarter, and we were running through our analysis, and my numbers for each of my operation lines came in within target. And, I went back and, I talked with, sort of all my program managers, in the operations space, and just made sure that our calculations were correct. Everyone was so happy because when you meet your targets, they meet their targets, right? Mm-hmm. It reflects very positively on everyone. And I remember, when it was shared with my manager's manager, there was no acknowledgement, none. And when I tried to, discuss this with him, it was sort of the same pattern where, I was sort of redirected to a peer. So with no information. And that was such a huge frustration point because if there was a problem, well, there was no communication. But per my understanding of, how our targets are calculated and measured, which were shared with other members of the company, we did good, right?
Right. And so she was saying you didn't do well?
Basically, like there wasn't the verbal acknowledgement that, yes, I did well, the targets were hit. None.
So did this person acknowledge other people on the team?
Right when I started, yes. This individual had a pattern of acknowledging other members, like when their targets were hit. And so that's where my expectation was built, right? Because I'd seen it with some of my other peers, but that wasn't the case for me.
And so that's what you want to watch out for, you guys, is, you know, sorry, I'm having flashbacks of my own situations. So when you're doing a good job and your manager's managers, they give praise to your colleagues when they do a good job, or hell, when they do a mediocre job, right? And so if you're doing a great job and you know you killed it and they say nothing, or they try to even turn it around and make it seem like, oh, but you still missed something, or something was still wrong, if they try to point out a negative in a sea of positive, that is a huge red flag. And at that point, you really need to try to get out of the department or the organization. So let me ask you this. When the person who was your safe space said, do you want to get out of the department? What was your response to that?
My response, quite honestly, like looking back, is I knew that in my mind and in alignment with my logic, I knew that was the right decision. But I was so scared of the political ramifications of doing that. I was so scared. And so that's something that I had to work through. And ultimately, at that point, once I had processed everything, so again, going back to why it's so important to like just document, like you said, document the good and document the bad, because just see a very clear picture of what your experience is and really decide whether this is a healthy environment where you are going to thrive, and then make a decision that protects your interests and is good for you or best for you. So going back to my situation, I knew that at that point, and this was, it was like 5-7 months in, I knew that culturally this organization wasn't going to work with me. Culturally, like it wasn't. Like I knew that intellectually, but it was a process for me to actually work up the courage to then actually say, you know what? I think I need to bounce out of here.
What were you holding on to? What was the limiting belief you believed about leaving the organization before the first year?
I think, you know what, it's just sort of like for me, one, I just had a hard time thinking like, you have really whacked up people like that in the world. I'll be honest. I'm like, people really can't be that bad. So you see, it's like my naivete is really coming through. It's so hard. And it's so hard for me personally because, the way I was raised and, just the caliber of folks that I've always interacted with since I was a young girl. Folks don't act like that. You know what I mean? It's like you really have to really have done something wrong, or maybe you're just down, dirty, meat. I mean, you really have to be on that level. And I just refuse to believe that was the case. So I really have to take responsibility for just my naivete. Mm-hmm. Because looking back, I just didn't have the courage then to call it what it was. I didn't have the courage to call a spade a spade. And so the consequence of delaying sussing out and just actualizing what a situation really is you're just really going to set yourself up for, just like, a lot of emotional turmoil, mm-hmm. a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of second guessing yourself, second guessing your judgment. And this, like you said earlier, can really take a massive impact or really a massive hit to your confidence and even the way you see yourself. So the goal here is not to, come out and bash Fortune 500 companies, but it's to really put the message out, pay attention. Mm-hmm. And don't be coy about calling a spade a spade. If things are great, phenomenal, excellent. But if things are hanky and your experience is fractional or not in equilibrium with your peers, regardless of, their skin tone, mm-hmm. call it what it is. It's a problem. And that's really going to accelerate you being able to make the right assessment or situation analysis and thereby make a decision that's best for you.
Amen. Okay, so let's talk about the end. What were the last 30 days like? What started happening? And move through on a high level what you learned.
Sort of like really moving through, like I said, for me, I definitely sort of delayed me making, or acting out on a decision that was best for me. So towards, the end, I knew culturally like this was just the wrong fit. I knew that, I was not happy or excited about, gosh, getting back in the recruiting cycle again because, I was just like, oh, I just got out of it. I don't want to do this again. But when I look back, that's a very short-term view, right? It's a really short-term view. So you want to, as best as possible, like if I could go back to myself then, keep things like always think long-term. Always think long-term. And the decisions and just even your professional positioning should keep you on the trajectory of what it is you see for yourself long-term and not short-term. So going back, it was difficult, sort of like going into the office day in, day out, because I had become so accustomed to these microaggressions that are absolutely not right. Like you should not allow yourself, you shouldn't open yourself up to a prolonged exposure to that kind of behavior because it's really going to do some damage.
Did you take up for yourself?
I did. I mean, looking back, there is value in every experience. When I look back, just having the level of courage that I have now, I didn't have then. But going through such a difficult, experience definitely armed me with the courage that I need to really stick up for myself and then really have the ability to set your boundaries and understanding, being more insightful and being more intentional about where or what organization or what spaces you choose to gift your talent and your time.
Amen. That's a word.
It's so important. And I'll be really honest, I didn't have that. I didn't have those tools, right out of, my MBA program.
Well, most people don't.
Yeah. So looking back, that was a huge blessing, even though it was such a difficult, kind of situation. I didn't have, I didn't have the level of perseverance that I do now. I didn't have the mental grit that I do now. I definitely didn't have really the level of resilience, that I do now. So, every experience is not a wasted experience. There's always a silver lining. So I think, looking back, I definitely appreciate the fact that I'm a lot stronger now than I was before.
Right. So just to be clear, they pushed you out of the organization, though, your managers and leaders. So what I want people to know, if you find yourself in a situation where you see they're just trying to figure out how to get rid of you. So the way it starts is they really heavily question your work product. They don't talk about any wins. Any wins are diminished. And every little thing that goes wrong, because you're human and things are not going to be perfect, they amplify those things. When you see that that's happening consistently and your manager is picking, but that manager doesn't do that to the other people on your team, or your boss's boss doesn't do that to the other people on their team, then that's when you know this is about you and it's not everybody gets treated this way. And so you have to watch out for that. And I think corporate warrior, that's what happened to you. You were being treated differently. And for whatever reason, they decided that they didn't want you from jump. It sounds like. And when you're wanted because you can tell your manager's really trying to set you up for success. Now, sometimes your manager, they can try really hard to set you up for success, but the corporate culture doesn't have the right tools and resources. That's a totally different situation. When you're at a huge company and they have tools and they have resources, they even send people for training, and your manager's not trying to give you any of that. Your manager's not meeting with you on a weekly basis, and your manager's canceling meetings that you're setting up with that person. Those are all red flags that this person's not for you. And that's okay. It's not personal. That's their ish and that's their issue. and you don't know what really happened behind the scenes, right? You get recruited from campus recruiting into the company. And then a lot of times you're just thrown into a team and the team had no say about you. So the team, they didn't hire you. And sometimes for some humans, first of all, humans don't like change. We just don't. It's just something we don't like. Something that is inevitably going to happen to all of us is change all the time, but it's something we don't like. It's the very weirdest thing. And if you want to see a simple example of that, let Facebook update how it looks and feels. And there's this whole big backlash for like 2 weeks. Why'd they change it again? No! Anything but that! So think about if a whole new ass person, and then add on to that a woman, and then add on to that a Black woman in my department that I ain't asked for, people act a fool. Does that resonate with you, corporate warrior?
It does. It does. And, what was also really interesting, that I found out after the fact is with this particular manager and this particular group, they've had such a sour history with minority female employees. So pretty much the setup is when you place a minority female in this group, they end up leaving the company, if not directly, but shortly thereafter.
Oh.
And so I was so disheartened to have learned that because, that's when things really did come to, I had closure over it because I was able to accept that, for whatever reason, there are a lot of sort of like cultural constructs within the organization that really have nothing to do with me.
Right.
And, this was an unlucky roll of the dice.
Yeah.
Unlucky roll of the dice. And it could have happened to me. It could have happened to anyone. And that really helped to, for me, realign who I am and what I'm bringing to the table. So, I could look back at all the prior successes, that I've had and all the awards and all the great experience and see who you really are. You're bomb. Yes. You're better than bomb. This was just an unlucky roll of the dice.
Right.
And you're able to just leave it at that, have closure over it, and very sort of constructively move forward. So, really happy where I am. I took a couple of months off just to regroup, to recenter. But I'm happy to report, got a really awesome opportunity in a city I absolutely love. Such a great environment. The difference in just even the first 5 days has been night and day. I mean, night and day. And I would definitely say I definitely, took a look back and took a lot of the hard lessons. And, second go around, hey, I was interviewing companies. I'm like, I'm not giving my talents. I'm not giving my beauty to just anyone anymore. You really have to come correct. So I'm kind of really happy that, everything kind of came full circle and, it sort of closed out with a happy ending. Yeah.
Yes.
So I really hope viewers or listeners are really encouraged by that.
Yes. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is why I do this show. Because even though we'll go through the bullshit, we have these stories. It happens to all of us. We get a bad manager. We get a bad manager's manager. We don't get onboarded. We don't get the training we need. We don't get the support. But yet we're expected to exceed expectations. And what I'm really proud of on the other end of this is to understand that when you're going through corporate and you're on this journey, and I want you all to be encouraged, every company has its season in your life. Every company is there to teach you something. And I want you to focus on, what am I here to learn? And it's not always just about the actual critical skill set that you're going to obtain through experience and through projects, but it's also the soft skills, the building relationships, gaining sponsors, gaining advocates, turning your boss into an advocate. Those take skill, those things to execute. And even if you're in a toxic workspace, you have to take ownership of what you need to do to make that workspace work for you until it is time for you to exit and move forward in this journey. And it's not always going to be easy. Okay? It's just not. But you can do it. And that's what we're here to show you in this person's story, is that they came from this amazing school, went to an amazing company, and the company is still amazing. This happens to be, a situation that happens in a lot of amazing companies. It's happening, you guys. That's what I want people to understand. I want to raise awareness. Like, I'm tired of people acting like this is okay and then somehow saying, well, that person wasn't a fit and that person didn't fit into our culture. No, you're trash and you need to get it together. You need to figure out how to really support people and set people up for success. And if you have a theme of females or minorities leaving your department or your team, you need to look at yourself in the mirror and figure out what the fuck is wrong with you. Because it's you. It's not them. It's you. And if you have a manager or you're in a situation like this where you're not being supported by people that you work with, and they need to hear this episode or they need to hear this clip, and you want me to send it to them and say, hey, there's a bunch of people in your organization that said you needed to hear this, to like your senior leaders, so your C-suite, your VPs, I'll be happy to send an email from ask@trilliumba.com and send them this episode with a nice professional note that says, hey, some of your employees are concerned about some of the departments in your company. You should take a closer look. You should make sure everybody's being set up for success. I don't understand why you hire great talent like this wonderfully made corporate warrior from a top tier MBA program. Now, mind you, they said top tier, okay? And yes, it is. But I'm just saying, everybody recognizes the caliber of person we're dealing with here. And this is what you do to them. This is how you treat them because of whatever funky stuff you got going on. Now, corporate warrior, I just want to make it clear before we close out. Was there some type of way in hindsight, okay? Was there some type of way that you could have conformed better or done something different in that space to make that situation better?
You know what? That's a great question. Definitely looking back, there were, I'm going to be really honest, there were a couple of things that I could have done.
Like what?
So if I were, to give a quick example, perhaps like going a little bit more out of my way to make folks feel comfortable. And what do I mean by that? As a professional Black woman and a smart and successful Black woman, you can tell when you walk into a room and it's almost as though folks around you are intimidated. Mm-hmm. It's really helpful for you to take the time to diffuse that intimidation. Mm-hmm. Because what happens when it goes unchecked is it then sort of goes into this negative psychological spiral. Mm-hmm. And that can make your interactions with folks even more difficult. The other thing that I would definitely say looking back is understanding or knowing that, building relationships is really important, but I didn't do it early enough. Mm-hmm. I didn't do it early enough because things were so chaotic. Mm-hmm. And I was really trying to come up to speed technically, mm-hmm. And technically meaning just understanding more of the sector specific knowledge base that I needed because this was a new industry for me. I didn't pay attention to that. And so looking back, that's definitely something that I would have done differently because the organization was just very, very relationship centric. very relationship centric. I think probably the most relationship centric that I've ever worked at. Mm-hmm. And so for me, just being a little bit of, that introvert, of being a little bit of, sort of that book nerd, it's not the first thing that I want to do. Right. I kind of want to get up to speed on the knowledge. Then I kind of follow up with then building the relationships. But there's some organizations where it's definitely really important to, just, put in that effort up front, like way up front.
And it's so key. That is the key to everything. Your first 30 days should be about meeting people and making it very clear with your manager what your objective is or deliverables are in the first 30 days. And then telling that manager that this is the priority, is me building relationships. And then the second priority is getting this shit done. Because that shit can actually wait. I don't care what they say. So here's the deal, you guys. I know we're at a critical point, and I want to prevent what happened to this corporate warrior to happening to you. And so what I'm planning on doing is launching an 8-week virtual course that will walk you through your new job. So I want to catch you within the first 90 days. So I'm hoping to do this 8 weeks starting in mid-August to mid-October, which means everybody should have started their new gig by then, but still be like within the first 90 to 120 days. If this is something that you would want to participate in, I need you to send me an email to ask@trillinba.com and let me know that you would be interested in a program like this. What it would do is take you through all the things that you need to focus on in your first 6 months in order to set yourself up for success, regardless of if your manager is trash or not. And let's face it, most managers are trash because nobody trains people how to be people managers. It's not their fault entirely. Everybody's just walking in the dark on people leadership. So give that person some grace because they don't know what they're doing. And you worry about setting yourself up for success. So again, hit me up at ask@trillinba and just a quick email saying, yes, Felicia, I would sign up for this first 6 months success course. I haven't named it clearly, but I really want to help you get on a good foot and set yourself up for your first promotion within the first 18 to 24 months that you're there. And that would be my goal. So hit me up if you're interested. I want to know if I have some people who are interested before I put everything together, because it's going to take some work on my end, but it will be well worth it. And again, the goal is to get you promoted within the first 2 years of you being at your new job. Is that something that you would have been interested in, Corporate Warrior?
Absolutely. If I could turn back time, absolutely. And guess what? When you set it up, I'm going to sign up too.
Awesome. So anybody starting a new job this summer, hit me up. Let me know. If I get 10 to 15 people, I will definitely build it out, launch it. You'll be the first in line to be able to participate and opt in and buy the course. So let me know. I really want to help you guys, and I'm willing to do the work. It will be affordable, but understand I'm an MBA, so I'm a little expensive. But I expect that you guys are getting signing bonuses, so it'll be fine. So, Corporate Warrior, any last bit of advice you want to give our listeners about starting their new job?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I want everyone listening, be optimistic and honestly take time to celebrate all your accomplishments. Like coming out of your program, it's hard and it's a huge, huge victory and such a huge testament to your investment, your sacrifice, your success. But now you're at a different milestone, right? So now sort of like you're leveling up and the rules of the game are different. So definitely pay attention. Definitely, sort of establish those relationships. Definitely try to suss out early on, what is it that I need to do or showcase to really be successful here? And if you run into situations that, are a little bit toxic, or you're not sure how to deal with it, find a safe space and talk to someone about it.
Amen.
So important. And, hopefully, if you ever find yourself, sort of a negative situation like I did, and, you're pushed out, the world does not come to an end. You will move on. And trust me, you will move on to something exponentially better, because that's my reality right now.
Yes. And that's always what happens. You always move on in your journey to the next thing that was better for you. And you had to go through that to understand how to get to that next step. The other thing I really want people to understand, you mentioned about that intimidation factor, and that does happen to a lot of us, especially when we're the only one on the team or in the department, or hell, sometimes in the whole damn company. What I want you to go back and do, there was an episode I did some months back, last year, actually, season 2, about shifting the energy. We have the power to shift the energy in the room. So I want you to use your Black Girl Magic, listen to that episode about shifting the energy. And that's where you need to shift the energy in those moments, and come with your most happy, most positive self, and show up in your light. No matter what they say to you, no matter how they treat you, you still shine your light, because that light will overtake all of that negativity they're trying to throw at you. So, couple bullets before we go. I really want you to understand, if you do find yourself in a very tough situation where you're not supported in your role, you still need to set yourself up for success. So the way to do that is by, 1, remaining confident and resilient in your worth. You made it through whatever you made it through to get to this job. This job cannot and will not negate all the great things you did before. So I want you to go back and remember, go look at your resume, go get your friends to hype you up, go remind you who you are, because you are the shit. That's why you got the job in the first place. Secondly, make sure you understand company policy. And then you hold your coworkers and leaders accountable to how they're supposed to treat people. That's usually in the company policy. It's in the values section, like what values we have, how leaders are supposed to operate, the expectation. That's all in the company policy. Hold the people around you and yourself accountable to the company policy. The third thing, speak up for yourself, document, and get an attorney. Because if they paid you to come, they will pay you to leave. So make sure you get your money coming and going, and an attorney will help you do that. And the very last piece of advice I want to leave you with, when you have enough documentation, create your exit plan and strategy so you can make sure you leave with money. Okay? So that's why documentation is so important. Document. And documentation is time, date, people involved, and the strict bullet points of facts of the conversation. Don't talk about how you felt. Don't talk about, this person made me feel bad when they said. No, this isn't therapy. This is documentation. So this person said XYZ. And that will speak to itself, because everybody will read that and be like, oh my God, if somebody said that to me, I'd feel like shit. That's exactly what you need to know. All you need to know are the facts. Date, time, first and last name of people involved in conversation, and bullet points of conversation. If you are in a state that allows you to record people, and so it's one-party recording law. So Texas is one of those states. Record people. Just do it. Don't tell nobody, especially if it's in the company policy not to. But still, record it, and it's between you and your attorney. You don't have to tell anybody else. Don't tell people that you record people. Don't tell people, I listened to the Trill MBA show, and she told me to record, and so what I did was I recorded them motherfuckers. Like, no. You're doing this as an extra step of protection of yourself. That's all. And you only need to do it when you know the writing is on the wall, when you start having enough documentation where it's like, okay, I'm reading this and I don't even believe this shit is happening. And that's when you need to start recording people. So you guys, we're going to get out of here because I'm not trying to have like a 2-hour episode, but I just want you to know I love you guys. You're going to have a great week this week. Remember, you shift the energy. You can make it if you're in a tough situation. It won't last always. And when that situation is over, a better situation is coming. And we have somebody that just gave their testimony to that. So let me ask you real quick before we go. You going to another Fortune 500?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
See? What it's like dating, you guys. What one man won't do for you, the other one will. Hey.
No, but I mean, you're definitely right. It's just sort of like, I think, it's so important not to internalize. And again, that's the importance. Like, it's just mental hygiene, just documenting. Because it's going to help you see things for what they really are. And that way you don't internalize, right? So we start to take that hit to our conscience and we start to internalize things that just aren't true.
Wait, say that part again, because it went wonky.
No, we start to internalize, when we start to believe things that aren't true about ourselves. So that's really the other protection that comes from just documenting. So you're just seeing things, you're able to look at things very clearly and very objectively.
Well, Corporate Warrior, thank you so much. I'm sorry you will sound like some weird, wonky FBI protected person. But that's because we want you to continue to survive and thrive and grow. I wish you all the great success. We will keep in touch. We'll come back in like 6 months and do an update on your new job.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. And thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for agreeing to do this. So if you have a work situation that you need help with, you know what to do. Go to trilmba.com/coaching. Schedule that free 30 minutes with me. And I'm telling you, 30 minutes is all I need to help you walk through that situation and set you on the right path. In addition, you can always email me at ask@trilmba.com. I'm either happy to answer your question or connect you to the right person if I don't have the answer. The other thing I need you guys to do is tell a friend about this show and this podcast, especially this episode. This episode, you need to give this to all your friends because there's some nuggets here that you need to know when you're starting a new job. So please share this episode with everybody you know. Subscribe, rate, and review, yes. But sharing it is so much more important. Knowledge is power. So don't just hold this to yourself. Don't be selfish. All right, you guys, until next week, have a wonderful week and keep it trill. The Trill MBA Show is a Fair World Corp LLC production. Executive produced by Felicia and Rose Enuha. Music is Kick Push by Ryan Little. Keep it trill every day, y'all.